Hey, thank you so much, everyone, and thank you for sticking around for a few extra minutes. I am going to make this as quick as possible, just so that we can be mindful of time. And does my screen look okay, Mark?
Yeah, it looks perfect.
Perfect. Okay. So like Mark said, my name is Latavia Pineda. I am the Southern California Outreach Manager for Small Business Majority. We are a national education and advocacy nonprofit that focuses on empowering America's small businesses and the self-employed. And we do this by providing tools, research, and advocacy that allows small business owners to create a more thriving and inclusive economy and create high quality jobs for their employees. We have a network of more than 80,000 business owners who can access all of our information completely for free. You're more than welcome to join our network and to become part of that group that gets notifications about special events, resources, and the other programming that we have, in addition to our surveys that we use to propel some of our advocacy work. I wanted to start off today by bringing a policy update to to the forefront of everyone's mind. Currently, in the House of Representatives, there is a bill, HR 1996, which is the Secure and Fair Enforcement Banking Act, or the SAFE Act. And basically, this is a bill that was introduced last year, or maybe in 2018 possibly, and was not able to get through to the Senate. Currently, this bill was reintroduced last Thursday in the House, and we're expecting a similar bill to be introduced into the Senate in the coming days here. And basically what this bill does is it protects banks that service state legal marijuana businesses from being penalized for federal regulations or by federal regulators. This would also kind of alleviate some of the burdens around taxes, and it would do away with the federal cash tax mandate. So that would overall kind of make it more easier to operate a cannabis-based business through the more kind of conventional banking systems. If this bill were to become law, it would reduce the obstacles faced by cannabis-based businesses looking for capital or to establish a banking relationship. So if this is something that is important to you, highly encourage you to get in contact with your representatives and your senators about this topic and encourage them to vote in favor of the Safe Banking Act. That's something that you think would benefit you and your business. But getting into some of the information about predatory lending, which would become less relevant if the SAFE Act were to pass. But here's a little research that we did a couple years ago. We found that 90% of small businesses, not even cannabis-based businesses, said that the availability of credit was a problem for them. And this is much larger even than the 90% for cannabis-based businesses. We know that only 18% of small businesses are ever able to access a banking loan, which of course is more severe for cannabis-based businesses who face the inability to kind of the barrier of entry related to federal legislation. And so as a result, when it is more difficult for small businesses and entrepreneurs to access conventional banking options and conventional loan options, they are more likely to fall victim to predatory lending. And so since about 2008, this is an issue that has been on the rise and is really at the core of the work that we do here at Small Business Majority. And kind of both as a positive and a negative, alternative lenders have stepped in to fill that void. However, oftentimes this comes with high cost, short-term online funding options. So these become very accessible loan products. However, oftentimes they're accompanied by less than ideal terms that folks will sign on to as a result of desperation and kind of that immediate need for capital. The The cannabis industry is a little bit different in regards to the different types of financing that kind of become available or that emerge, such as invoice financing. But with all of that, it's very important to be mindful of the terms of what you're signing up for. I just think it's very important to know that small businesses are not protected in the same way that individual consumers are in the financial sense. So some of the laws and regulations and rules that are in place to protect consumer borrowers are not in place to protect small businesses, and it's very important to know that. So whereas a consumer, you would expect to see a very clearly defined loan terms or just any sort of debt that you're taking out, the terms are very clearly defined. That is not the case with small business financing, and oftentimes there are deceptive practices such as not listing annual interest rates, but rather listing daily interest rates, for example. So you see the number and you think it's very low, a very low reasonable interest rate, but actually it's very high and can lead to the downfall of a business. There's also different types of other types of emergency cash that can create problems for small businesses, such as merchant cash advances, which are kind of the payday loans of small business. So, they can be really helpful in the moment, but long-term, their implications can be really damaging. So definitely important to know that not every loan is the same. Not every type of capital is going to be the same. And so to really read the terms of what you're signing up for in advance. In addition to kind of all of those hurdles I've already listed, these are all magnified, as I'm sure many of us know, for women and minority entrepreneurs, especially in an industry that has a lot of stigma around it. And we're constantly facing kind of some of the issues around reparations and the war on drugs. And so there's a lot of different barriers that really a lot of different factors that really make the lending space more complex and a little bit more difficult to navigate, and really requires you to, unfortunately, be an expert in not just your industry, but also banking, which is a whole different world in and of itself. These are some of the more conventional sources of funding. Some of these are options to you all as cannabis-based businesses, and some are not. So some of the ones that I would like to highlight include venture capital, and historically it has been pretty difficult for small businesses, and especially cannabis-based businesses, to access venture capital. But I will say that currently there is a little bit of a change in that landscape, and there's kind of a movement to change the world of venture capital, because typically it's really hard for small businesses who don't already have a connection with a venture capital firm to even get into the door. But that is changing currently with some of the different social movements that are taking place. So I highly would encourage you, especially in a state like California, to try to take advantage of venture capital where possible. And then additionally, if some of the regulations in place on banking institutions were to be lifted, it would become a lot easier to access community banks and credit unions, which have always been really supportive of small businesses. It would become easier to access microloans if state laws are able to be enforced instead of federal laws regarding kind of the banking world. Always, before you borrow, very important. Very important to know that there's a few questions you should always consider. First off, what do you need the money for? How much do you need? Exactly how much do you need? Oftentimes folks will get shy about money and they'll say, oh, about $15,000, but actually it ends up being $23,000. So those precise calculations are very important. What is the current financial state of your business to pay this back in the long term? How long have you been in business? An exact date is very important, something that you can point to on paper, whether that's your business license or something else. How much collateral, if any, do you have? How quickly do you need the money? And are you seeking debt or equity financing? This is a very important question to ask in your industry, because debt financing is a lot more kind of the conventional debt practice of borrowing money that you will later repay. Equity financing, however, is different, and it could be a great option for some of you who maybe are interested in selling a portion of your already established business to another individual, and then you will split the the sale of your business later on down the road. So those the equity financing piece is very important here. And if it's something that you think you might be interested, I encourage you to do a little bit more research. And again, just proceed with caution when looking into alternative lending. There's a lot of great programs out there, especially with the new kind of online lending landscape that we have. But some of them can be very deceptive and very harmful to your business. So proceed with caution. Not all online lenders are created equal. The Small Business Borrowers Bill of Rights, if you do start looking into lending, I highly encourage you to always consider these, or if you're looking into borrowing, I encourage you to consider these points when doing so. And these are questions that you should always be able to ask a lender, and they should always be able to answer. And if they are not able to answer this, it might be cause for concern. It might be a good moment for you to pause and reconsider what you're doing. So those are, what is the interest rate? Are there any upfront fees? Fees tend to not be disclosed in small business lending. What are the payment amounts and frequency? Are there any prepayment penalties? What is the full cost of the loan over its lifetime? Very important question, because that's often something that will be concealed very deliberately. If you're refinancing, are there any fees added to the existing principal that you'll have to that you'll incur interest on? Is the lender imposing deadlines for accepting the loan offer? Very important. And if going through a broker, are their fees fully disclosed? Broker fees can become pretty burdensome. So keep that in mind. Again, here's some information on how to contact your representative and your senators if you have any questions, or if you are in support of changing the federal regulations regarding cannabis-based businesses in the banking world. Both, like I said, those bills are both going through the House and the Senate actively as we speak. So definitely take initiative there if it's something that you're passionate about reforming. Small Business Majority runs an online resource hub called venturize.org, where we house information about access to capital, workplace benefits, and all of the other work that we do, including taxes. If you are interested in becoming a small business spokesperson and telling your story, highly encourage you to do that. That could include sharing letters to the editor, being highlighted in a blog post or on our social media, sharing your story, maybe testifying before Congress or something like that. So I highly encourage you to get involved in our network and stay in touch if you're not already part of our network. And here is my contact information if you have any questions about the small business world in general. But with that, I am done, and thank you all so much for joining us today and for hanging out for a few extra minutes.